All right, welcome. I did recognize a few names from last time, so welcome back. And to anybody who's new, my name is Sarah. I am a Lakehead Aurelia student, and I'm actually in my 6th year at Lakehead. So I've been here for quite a while, and I'm very happy to be presenting this workshop for all of you. And I'm happy that the Canadian Federation of Economic Education partnered with National Bank to put on these very important topics to help students through their education and through financing their education. And hopefully you all learned something through the course of this workshop. So we'll get started. So CFEE and the National Bank have partnered to offer post-secondary students across the country access to important financial literacy workshops. So the program, Help Managing Your Money on Campus, is designed to help support young people like you by providing you with comprehensive financial education modules. This is so important and timely because more than ever, we live in a complex financial world. And the majority of you have likely already experienced the world of financial costs, responsibilities, planning, spending, debit, credit cards, and so much more. And that's exactly why we've partnered with universities across the country to help equip students with the information they need to take all of life's financial challenges. So in the first half of 2020, the CFEE asked students about their priorities and what they want to learn more about. And nearly 1,500 students answered our survey from 94 different post-secondary institutions. And this is what they found out. So their research identified that nearly 2/3 of students are currently dealing with financial stress. And over 57% of students are looking for help preparing and working with a budget. And not only that, but half of students also reported having difficulty generally knowing how to manage their finances. And so the CFE heard these concerns and they understand all of our challenges. And that's why they have put together this presentation and the future workshops as well. So what are we going to be talking about today? Today we're talking about 3 major topics, the first of which is the value of goal setting, and we'll talk about how to make healthy money decisions, the importance of having a plan, and how to go about setting your goals. Next, we'll look at how to make a budget, which is a very important topic, and we're going to go through the budgeting process while talking about the differences between needs and wants, and give you some tips for spending on large purchases like a car or a house. And finally, we will be talking to you about saving. So we're going to try to, make saving a positive part of your budget. And there's a ton of tips and tricks that we will share with you today as well. So coming out of this workshop, you will be able to make more informed decisions about purchases and understand why we buy things and the influences on our behaviors. You will be able to create a budget that includes savings and can help reduce your financial stress. And you're going to know how to apply the magic of compound interest to increase your savings, which is a very helpful tool as you learn and create your budget. So we'll get right into the first section here. So first up, we're going to discuss the importance of goal setting. Whether you want to own a home, obtain a good education, develop an artistic skill, or become an athlete, goal setting is a huge part of reaching all of your dreams. But it can be challenging. And so it is important to make the decisions you believe are best for you and the ones that fit your values, your priorities, and your goals. And that will hopefully make you happy and make you feel good about your decision. Over time, though, and at different stages of life, our priorities and concerns can change. And the priorities and concerns and goals of someone who is 15 will likely be quite different from those of you when you reach 65. And so therefore, when setting goals, you have to consider the changes that will occur throughout what is called your life cycle and prepare accordingly. So let's get started with goal setting, and here's what we're going to cover. So we have 3 main things. The first is let's talk about your money decisions. The second is the importance of having a roadmap, and the third is setting SMART goals, which I'm actually pretty familiar with in my program. So most people make decisions about how to use money every day. It's always something that we have to consider. And it may be something like taking the bus or buying something for lunch or putting money in a parking meter. Pretty much anything that you do on a daily basis that can require a cost. And like it or not, we need money to get and do a lot of things nowadays. So try and think of the last day when you didn't spend any money, or make a decision about how to use your money, either yours or someone else's. It may be a little more common nowadays or in the last year or so that we didn't go out and make small purchases like that morning coffee or going out for lunch because of the pandemic, but we are ramping back up. And I'm sure a lot of those small costs and small purchases will begin to add up again. So it's always something that you have to keep in mind. You probably make many decisions involving money, and you always have choices in those. So what things can influence the decisions that you make? There's quite a few, and these always can affect your decision to spend money. The first is emotions. So some questions that might come up is like, what emotional response did you get from purchasing or thinking about purchasing an item? I know that sometimes when I'm feeling sad or stressed, I start to online shop. So that's one thing that you have to consider, and one thing that can affect your spending. Another is friends and peers. So was it your friends and what you thought they would think about your choice that is some kind of peer pressure affecting your decision to purchase something? You may be influenced by customs, traditions, and habits. So did you purchase something because it was the style of clothes that you always have? Was it in your custom, tradition, or habit, or is it just falling in line with your past choices? Another is family members. I know my family members always influence the decisions that I make in my personal and financial decisions. Latest styles and fads is another one. So following trends usually can influence your purchasing as well. Advertising is another one. So if you see something that really interests you, that can influence you to go and buy that product. Another is incentives. And I know as students, usually around back to school time, there's quite a few different incentives and sales that are geared towards us. And that might influence us to purchase different products. And the last is just your values and your confidence. So did you purchase something because of what you thought and what you wanted, and your own sense of values and style, and knowing what you want and making a very confident financial decision? And all of these factors can influence your buying and personal and purchasing decisions. So it's always something to keep in mind. All right, we're going to give you some few tips about making good money decisions and what to consider before making those decisions. The first is to take a moment to think about your thinking. So that might sound a little weird, but to make a good decision, it helps to take a minute or two to think about that decision and the choice that you're making, and more importantly, why you are making it. So many people make decisions without really thinking about why they're making that particular decision. And some questions that might come up is like, is it because it's the kind of decision you have already and always made, because you're trying to make somebody happy maybe? Is it because you think it will make you happy? Is it because someone taught you to make decisions that way? Is it a part of who you are and reflects your values? So it's always important to take into consideration why you are making that decision. The second, you should consider your opportunity cost. So that is, what are you giving up by making this decision? So every decision has an opportunity cost, and giving up one thing to get another. So you could be giving up something else you could buy with the money that you are spending, or something else you could do with the time that you are investing to buy that product. For example, it could be visiting a different city and going on a trip, going and taking a different course at school, and things like that. Among all of the possible alternatives, you just want to think of what the next best thing is that you will be giving up, and that is your opportunity cost. So that's also something to consider. The next is to consider future possibilities. So in addition to what you might be giving up, what might you be giving up in the future because of your decision, and what could be different if you waited on that purchase. Finally, you also want to consider if you can actually afford that purchase. So do you have the money to pay for it at that particular moment? And if not, are you going to use a credit card? And will you have the money to pay off that credit card balance when you get your bill? So you don't want to be carrying the cost into the future. And you don't want to be incurring interest on that purchase. So if you're going to pay interest, you must consider that as a part of your costs and as a part of your decision, and always have that in mind as well. But you want to be proud of building up a savings account as compared to buying things. So you should be more proud of having savings that will allow you to preserve or persevere through life's challenges, and they can help you out if you kind of come into an emergency situation in the future. Another important tip is to differentiate between your personal wants and your needs. So there will be an element of personal value within these decisions, but you have to be honest with yourself as to what you determine to be a want and what you determine to be a need. So a need is something that's essential for living. So out of the pictures, you can see a small sandwich there. That would be a need. You need food to survive. So other things that are a need in a particular way are housing, transportation to work or school, the grocery store, anything like that. Food, having your phone is pretty much a need nowadays. And another need to consider is also to have savings in the event that you need to use funds in an emergency. And a want is something that makes life more enjoyable, but we can live without. So out of the pictures, going out to eat at a fancy restaurant could be a want as opposed to eating some of the food that you have in your fridge. So in essence, a want is something that's more expensive and could be a different form of a need, but with more cost. So another example is buying the newest cell phone when you have one that works perfectly fine, going on a vacation to another country, if you need to consider that as well, buying a new car, buying a ticket to a concert, those are all wants. So those are things that you need to consider a little more closely when you're planning your budget and your expenses. So it's important to plan your cash flow or your budget to ensure that you can cover your needs first, and then you can move on to your wants. So once you've paid for your needs, including some savings, because savings, once again, is a need, then you can decide to do with your money if you want to purchase a want or spend money on something that is considered a want. You also want to be aware of the difference between a need and a want and identify what kind of spender you are. If you're an impulse buyer, that means you typically go for what you want before what you need. And I know that I have made some of those decisions in my life. I'm definitely an impulse buyer at Dollarama, but it's always important to consider your spending choices and how that can affect your spending choices in the future. A good rule of thumb is to sleep on it, especially if it is a big financial decision. So you want to take time to think about your spending decisions, and you don't want to be a compulsive buyer. You want to make sure that you're getting everything that you need out of that purchase. And you don't want to let others make spending decisions for you. And you want to be aware of how advertising tries to lure you into making purchases you may not need. So you also have to consider those. All right, we have some shopping tips for you now. So let's get into it. So you want to ensure that you understand unit pricing. So unit pricing shows how much one unit costs. So per 100 milliliters, for example, or per cup/napkin. And often it's better to buy in bulk if an item is non-perishable. So for example, it might be good to buy a box of granola bars in bulk, but it might not make sense to buy like 100 eggs at a time because you will not be able to use all of those eggs before they go bad. One store that is great for this is Costco, and it's a great place to buy in bulk. And you can sometimes split those purchases with family or friends. I know that I share a Costco membership with my mom, and it was an awesome thing to have when I was living in Aurelia because Costco is right across the street from campus, and it always ensured that I had steady snacks in my room. So just consider unit pricing, make sure that you understand it, and make sure that it is something that you will be able to consume before it goes bad, before it becomes useless. You also want to keep a shopping list so that when you go grocery shopping or go to get anything from Costco or big box stores like Walmart, that you're only buying what you need. And then you can also keep track of all of your spending that way. If you truly need something, getting it on sale may be a great way to save money, so you can keep an eye on things like that. There are some apps that can help with this and help finding certain items on sale at different stores. So Flip and Reebee are great apps. I have personally used Flip, and it has all of the flyers for different grocery stores on it. You can create a shopping list and it'll automatically find you sales and deals on those items. And there could be special coupons for different stores on that app as well. And then another thing to consider is to buy store brands. So things like no-name brands from Zehrs or No Frills are great options to maybe buying a name brand if it's more cost effective. At Walmart, it's great value. So you also want to consider this because everyday items can be a great way to save money if you're using and buying store brands. So that's another thing to consider when you are going shopping for things that you need. Yes, the final one is to try and not shop for groceries when you're hungry, because you will take and make decisions based on your needs or your wants in the moment, and those can influence your spending as well. All right. There's no shortage of advice that you're likely to receive about how to manage your money and what you should be doing with your money. But in the end, you will be the one deciding, and you will decide what your needs and wants are and what you really want in life. So a key factor that can affect your decisions are your goals. If you don't have goals, then your goals won't play a role in your money decisions. But if you have goals, then those are always in the back of your mind, and they can help you guide where you want to go and what you want to achieve in the future. And they will always have an impact on your decisions. And therefore, setting goals for yourself can be a very powerful incentive that can have an effect on all of the decisions that you make. But why can goals make a difference? That's a big question and something that you do have to consider when you're making goals. So if you have goals, you'll be able to consider the possible trade-offs as you make decisions today and how it will affect you in the future. Saving to achieve a goal can be very rewarding and personally satisfying, which is a real motivator and a confidence builder. And achieving a goal can help you prove to yourself that you can accomplish what you set your mind to and inspire others for other goals. A lot of good money habits is about changing your behaviors and building upon successful achievement of various goals. So it can kind of set a precedence for you as you're achieving future goals. And though money does not buy happiness, it does play an important role in most people's lives. We may wish it weren't true, but it is. Earning money and spending money, saving money, investing money, making money, losing money, pretty much anything relating to money affects your life. and we make all kinds of decisions daily related to money. So it's always something that you do have to consider. Money can also help us out though. So you want to keep that in mind, but you also don't want it to cause problems for you either. So you don't want to be getting into debt, which causes stress and tension, and then potentially pushing you past a point where you're not comfortable in your spending habits and things like that. To avoid money problems, it's best to try and stay in control of your money and how you use it. So you'll want to maximize and minimize, you want to maximize the help of money, the help that money can provide, and minimize the problems that it can cause. So today is the best time to start taking control of your money, and the best way to take control is to be prepared and to have a plan. So planning how to handle money is not only for those who have lots of it. In fact, the less money you have, the more important it is to plan how you're going to use it. So as you build your plan, you have to consider different time periods within your life. The short term is what you hope to achieve in the next year, possibly in the next week or month. The medium term is what you hope to achieve in the next 1 to 3 years. And the long term is what you hope to achieve in the next 3 to 5 years. So the more distant future is also past 5 years and beyond. So you always have to have these in your mind as well as you are planning for your money. Short-term goals can be very helpful as they serve as stepping stones to achieving your medium-term goals and your long-term goals and beyond that. So some examples of this would be if you're looking to save up for a car, if you break it down into monthly savings and goals over the next few years, you have short-term goals that you're reaching that can help you with a medium-term goal in the future. And then for medium-term goals, we can use those as stepping stones to long-term goals and so on. And doing this kind of creates checkpoints for you to see where you are and how you're doing over time. And it also helps you think about whether your goals have changed and if you want to change the direction of how you're spending. As you succeed with all of the goals that you set for yourself, you'll find a way to celebrate these goals and be proud of what you've accomplished. And if you are usually in your teens and early 20s, your thoughts are probably not on necessarily things beyond personal relationships, education, beginning your job and your career and other work opportunities, entertainment, sporting events, travel. And that's okay for now, but it is always important to have what you want to achieve in the future and beyond that in mind as well. So it's always important to take control of your financial affairs. And that means that thinking about the various stages of your own life cycle. So you can't think only about what's important today. You have to also think about what's important to you in the future and at future stages in your life cycle. And it's also important to find a balance between today and the future and to develop a plan that helps you live as happy a life as you can today and the next month and even further into the future. So we're going to talk more about setting goals, and I have a short video for you all that I will play.
So what is a SMART goal? Well, let's cover the definition of a goal first. A goal is the desired result that you envision, plan, and commit to achieving. But most people never reach their goals. We live in a microwave society. We want our dreams and we want them now, without putting in the work to get there. But goals are achieved in a slow cooker. It takes time, which means small, intentional steps every day. Chris Hogan, a leadership and retirement expert, says,
"A dream without a plan is a wish."
That was weird. That's why New Year's resolutions rarely work. In January, you can't find an empty Stairmaster at the gym, but by March, it's a ghost town. Where did all those people go? Well, we don't need an in-depth Dateline investigation to figure out what happened here. They didn't set SMART goals. Goals that are specific, measurable, achievable. relevant, and time sensitive. Setting a resolution to lose weight won't cut it. But if you set a SMART goal to drop 20 pounds by March 15th by going to the gym 3 times a week and cutting out milkshakes, you'll be more likely to succeed. At Ramsey Solutions, we recommend.
All right, we're going to test you now. So we are going to launch a poll, and we want you to determine which of the goals in this poll are SMART goals. So just as a review, you want to make sure that the goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time sensitive. So we'll give you a moment to submit your answers for this. I'll give you all another 30 seconds and then we'll talk about all of the goals here. All right. So it looks like most of you are pretty familiar with SMART goals. I think you all got every single one of them correctly, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to pick one and just kind of relate it to my personal experiences. So for example, the one that says complete my math assignment by Thursday and hand it in at Friday's class is actually very relevant to me because I do have a math assignment that I have to complete in the next few days. And just going through the criteria of SMART goals, it's specific because it's talking exactly about what you need to complete. It is measurable because you're giving yourself a time frame to complete it in. It's achievable because you would have had done the learning to complete this assignment. It's relevant because it's needed to pass your course. And it's time sensitive because it's due by Friday. So you have that kind of deadline built into that goal as well. So props to everybody on that poll. You all did amazing. All right, and we have a worksheet that I believe you were all sent before, or if not, you will be sent it after this presentation in this workshop. But this is just a worksheet that you can use to set up some SMART goals for yourself. So this worksheet provides you with some questions to ask yourself to ensure that your goals are SMART. So just as an example, if I were to create a SMART goal for myself, I'm going to relate it back to my math assignment again. I have to do a math learning log and I have to complete it. I'm probably going to do it Saturday. And then it is achievable because I do have all of the materials and all of the knowledge to complete it. It's realistic because it is due and relevant to me passing the course. And it is time sensitive because it is due on Monday. So I do have to complete it in the next few days. So we are going to challenge you that at the end of this workshop and after we leave here today, we want you to create a SMART goal for yourself and practice using this method to create goals and kind of give you some guidance on how you are going to be achieving those goals. And that brings us to the end of our first section tonight. So some key takeaways from this section. The first is to make sure that you're making good money decisions and that you want to take the time to consider why you need to make that financial decision. The second is to have a roadmap of how to get to your destination, and the goals that you make should be the most important factor that you use to determine your purchases and to make purchasing decisions. And finally, to achieve your dreams, you need to set SMART goals. This is actually a very big thing in my program, so I'm very familiar with them, and I do believe that SMART goals are a great way to plan how to achieve a specific goal of yours. And I definitely recommend you using it. as a way to guide you in your future decisions and to reach your own goals. All right, now we're going on to our next section, which is about budgeting and spending. So this is also an important step to creating and achieving our goals. And another way of to think about this section is how to manage your cash flow. So you always, it's always much better for you to manage something than to manage for it to manage you. So you want to make sure that you have control over your spending. Here's what we're going to cover in this second section. The first is how budgeting works. The second is to prioritize your needs over your wants. And the third is to prepare for major purchases. All right, I believe this is another poll. So if you want to answer this question, the first is, do you have a budget, yes or no? Feel free to take a second to answer that one for us. All right, I'm going to give you all another 10 seconds or so. All right, so it looks like we're split about halfway. So half of you do have a budget and half of you don't have a budget. Totally fine. The thing about today is we want you to start the process of creating a budget, but we also want to give you tips on how to follow that budget. So that is our next question. So our question, if you do have a budget, do you follow it? Wow, I'm a little surprised about this. Great job. I'm glad that you do follow your budget because it is a great way to manage and have control over your finances. For those of you that are not familiar with creating or following a budget, that's totally fine. One of the main things that we want to get through this in this section is that creating a budget is a good first step, but the real test is actually following it. So you want to make sure that you ask yourself that your budget, if your budget is realistic, because sometimes budgets are wishes and not realities, and they can be too restrictive. They can be based on your values and your lifestyle. So when making a budget, you have to be realistic. If you want to reduce spending in a category, you have to do it gradually over time as well. Because it is unlikely that you're going to go from spending $200 a month eating out to $0 in a day. So you have to plan to reduce. Typically, a good rule of thumb is by 25% at first, and then you can see how you're managing that change. And from there, you can reduce further and make bigger decisions about how to reduce your budget as well. All right. So some of you may be asking, if you're not familiar with building a budget, why should you? Putting together a budget will help you manage and control your money. And a budget is a plan for how you use your money on a month-to-month basis. And it helps to look after all of your expenses, both those that you have each month and those that come up now and again. It helps to work out how you will cover your expenses from your income, so all of the money that you're bringing in. And a budget also helps you to save and build up your savings over time and to achieve your future financial goals. So a budget should not be a straitjacket or super restrictive. If anything, it can help you give greater financial freedom. So when it comes to budgeting and financial planning, you'll hear a term thrown around a lot, and that is financial freedom. And so what does this mean? And how are you free of if you're cutting back to save money? Financial freedom is about having flexibility and power over your money and your own life. And it means that you're prepared for unexpected costs, like if your car breaks down and you have to pay to repair it. And that's rather than struggling to find money when that comes up, you have prepared for that, and it doesn't cause financial stress. So financial freedom is cutting back on the less important costs for now so that you can afford a house in the future, your car payments, a family vacation, or even a child if you're planning for this in the years to come. So yes, financial freedom can involve restricting your expenses now, but with the goal of leaving you free of stress in the future. And a budget really helps you know where your money is going. And as you work out your budget, you may find ways to cut back or ways to save more, which is awesome. And if you can use your budget to pay yourself first, in a sense. So if you pay yourself last, it often ends up that there is nothing left. So if you put some of your money in a savings account when you get it and budget how you will use the rest, that is a way to pay yourself for the hard work that you put in to making and receiving all of that money. Even if it's a small amount, you can try and start paying yourself with savings over time. And you can try to make saving a habit from your young age as of now. And it's a very great habit to develop, and it can be an important way to achieve your goals in the future. So what does a budget involve? Basically, a budget involves comparing your income or the money that you're bringing in to the expenses and the money that you're spending. So it gives you a picture of your financial situation and where you may be heading. And it should give you a very clear indication of whether or not you're on the road to accomplishing your longer term goals. There are different kinds of budgets, and there's a type of budget where you can allocate your income to different categories. For example, one way to budget is 50% of your income goes towards your needs, 30% goes towards your wants, and 20% goes towards your budget. And that is for people with low or no income. And with this type of budget, you have to document your essentials and then list how you're going to pay for them. But for the most common budget type, this is the zero-based budget. And this is where every dollar is accounted for, including savings. So let's learn more about that. Basically, a budget involves comparing your wants and your needs, which we did discuss in the first section. And it gives you a picture of all of your spending, all of your financial income and everything related to that. And your budget should be realistic. And you have to be patient to accomplish any goals that you set for yourself when it comes to budgeting. Because you will not create a perfect budget the first time you try, and you will most likely miss things, possibly annual items like car registration or your renewal fee, an insurance charge that changes. Basically anything that can come out and fluctuate throughout the year can affect your budget, but you don't want to be discouraged, and you want to just try and be patient to find a budgeting process that works well for you. And creating a budget for yourself may be a good SMART goal to develop after this workshop. It's important to find a budgeting method and process to track your budget that works for you. Not every budgeting style will work for you, so you have to kind of work through and find one that best suits you. If you're not really good at spreadsheets, don't build an elaborate spreadsheet for your budget, as you may give up because you're not familiar with the platform, or you work better in a different kind of organization style. And we don't want you to give up on your budget a few months down the road. So like I mentioned in the last slide, there are different kinds of budgets. So the budget where you allocate your income for different categories, like I explained previously, the survival budget, which is for people with low or no income. And this type of budget, you have to document your essentials again and list how you're going to pay for them. And finally, the most common is the zero-based budget, where every dollar and every amount of income that you bring in is accounted for. So we do have another video for you that I'm going to play just to explain zero-based budgets a little bit further.
Action!
What is a zero-based budget? Well, let's define a budget first. Your average budget is a monthly estimate of income and expenses with a list of categories. In other words, it's just a plan for your money. At Ramsey Solutions, we recommend taking it one step further with a zero-based budget. The idea here is simple. The money that comes in minus the money that goes out equals zero, meaning you've told every penny exactly where it's going to go. Just like how you told that guy in traffic exactly where he was going to go. Now, making a zero-based budget isn't as hard as it sounds. Step 1, list your take-home pay for the month. Step 2, list all your expenses for the month, but start with these 5 categories: food, shelter, utilities, transportation, and clothing. The basics. You want to make sure your rent or mortgage is budgeted first before you start budgeting for something like your hot yoga membership. Jeff. Once the necessities are taken care of, move to step 3. List the rest of your expenses like haircuts, Netflix, date nights, plus all the stuff your kids need. Man, are kids really that expensive?
Yep.
Golly. Don't let life catch you off guard. Think ahead and plan for events or situations you need to save up for. Holidays, weddings, birthdays, bar mitzvahs, quinceañeras, chupacabras, you name it. You can even create a fund in your budget to put aside money every month so you're ready when that day comes. Christmas is on December 25th. Again, don't act surprised, people. Now, if you...
All right, so now that we have been introduced to zero-based budgets a little, we're going to kind of dive into them a little bit more. So like the first step said in the video, it is to write down your total income. So once again, this is your total take-home pay after all of the taxes are taken off of your paycheck for both you and if you're married or you're living with somebody and you're sharing expenses, both of your incomes. And you don't want to forget to include everything. So if you have a full-time job, a part-time job, a second job, any freelance jobs that you have, things like that. Some government programs, so like your GST and things like that. You want to collect all of those and write them all down. The second step, as explained in the video, is to list your expenses. So you have to think about all of the bills that come regularly and things that you pay for regularly. So this could be your rent, electricity, internet, and these are fixed expenses. So these don't change each time that you pay them. And you don't want to forget costs that you'll have to pay but are not monthly. So for example, some quarterly payments for insurance or property tax if you own property, and things like that. So you want to also consider those that don't come monthly but are fixed expenses throughout the year. After that, you add up all of your other costs, so your variable costs. So these are things like groceries, gas, entertainment, and clothing, or things that vary over time. And every dollar that you spend should also be accounted for, just like your income. And as we mentioned, you don't want to forget to pay yourself first. So once again, you want to ensure that some money should go into your savings account, and you might want to monitor your spending for a few months to get a clear picture of where your money is going. And there are actually a bunch of apps that you can use that can help with this, or you can use an Excel spreadsheet or create a system of your own. The third step is to subtract expenses from your income, and this should equal 0. So we call this, once again, a zero-based budget, meaning that your income minus your expenses should equal zero. And when you do that, you know that every dollar that you make has a place in your budget. If you're over or under, you have to check your math, or simply return to a previous step and try again and kind of switch things around so that it works for you. And the fourth step is to track your spending. So once you create your budget, you're going to want to track your spending, and you want to make sure that you are staying pretty consistent in your budget, or you can adjust your budget accordingly. And this is the only way that you'll know if your spending lines up with your plan. And you have to be patient once again, because it can take several months to ensure that your budget is able to track all of your items, all of your income, and all of your expenses. The biggest takeaway from this is to keep up with your budgeting and try to keep that up to date. And you want to truly reflect on the income and your expenses in your life. So this is an example. This is a budget worksheet that can help you break down all of your monthly income and your regular expenses, or your varied expenses. And it has three main categories. So your income, your expenses, and your total monthly income minus your total monthly expenses, which is where you will find if your budget is balanced or if you need to make adjustments. And just a question, if anyone wants to put some in the chat while you're reviewing this, do you think that any categories are missing under income or under expenses? And you want to consider that so that you can add them to your future budget. So I'll give you a second to consider that. You want to make sure that your budget is a tool that actually helps you track your spending, and it's only useful if you follow it. So you want to make sure that you are including everything that is relevant to you. There are also apps, like I mentioned a little earlier, that can help you budgeting. One of them is called Mint. If anyone wants to use that, it is pretty common. And this can be a helpful way to keep you in control of your money and to begin budgeting. It's also important to know the difference between, once again, fixed and variable expenses. So just as a review, fixed expenses are those that stay the same every month. So like your rent, if you have a consistent phone bill and internet bill, those are fixed expenses. And then varied expenses are ones that change every month. So this could be your food costs, because your groceries can vary depending on week to week, or your entertainment costs and things like that. It's difficult to change your fixed expenses quickly. So for example, you have to give notice to cancel a gym membership or your Netflix subscription and things like that. And just as an example of easily changing one, if you're canceling something that you've already paid for that month, then you don't have to consider it in the future. A budget would be if you canceled a subscription to a streaming site. A good tip is to not spend more than 50% of your income on fixed expenses, because that will give you a little bit more flexibility when it comes to your variable expenses that you don't necessarily know the true amount of. Because this also means the variable expenses are easier to control, and there's lots of ways to save on variable expenses. You can eat out less, for example, if that's one of your variable expenses that happen to incur over time. You can also turn off your data if you keep going over on your phone and that's changing your phone bill, and things like that. You can find sales to help you save on your food expenses on groceries and things like that. All right, and we have a sample budget here. So we just want to kind of give you an example of how you would fill out this sheet. Just as a disclaimer, this is not a zero balance budget because our total expenses are more than our total income. So for example, if your budget ends up looking like this, it does equal a sign that you will have to make some changes in your spending. So for this budget, for example, they are spending $557 more than they're making. So this person would have to go back and reconsider some of their purchasing decisions. So my go-to categories that I would have to reevaluate are usually entertainment and clothing and potentially food if those food costs are from eating out. So you can ask yourself questions about your decisions, like, do I have to go out to this place once a week to eat, or can I make something cheaper at home? For clothing, do I have to follow that specific trend, or can I find it cheaper if I thrift it? And questions like that. Let's take a look at some of the more common costs for us as students. So while the last year or so has been a little different because of online learning, typically these are the costs that students face. So there are a lot of things here, but don't be discouraged about these costs. You want to break them down into smaller pieces, and you can create SMART goals once again about how to accomplish your spending goals related to these. The first is tuition, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, and these vary depending on your program and the school that you attend. So that is a cost that you have to consider as a student, and it is always good to look at that as you're beginning a summer job or something, and you can set yourself a SMART goal on how you will save up money to help with that tuition payment in the fall. The next is textbooks, which are a very big cost that a lot of people don't necessarily consider to begin with. And these costs vary again by program and by the courses that you're taking. So if you know that you're interested in a certain area of study, do some research on how much textbooks cost so that you can factor those into your budget. Another is supplies. So school supplies like notebooks, pens, highlighters, those things also may be something that you don't consider as you're creating your budget. So always keep that in mind. And depending on your program as well, if you're in a science program, you might need lab supplies to buy as well, which can increase your spending in this area. Transportation is another thing. So if you live at home and you're commuting to campus for classes, you'll have to consider costs of gas and maintaining your car and things like that. For us, luckily, students do get a bus pass for either the city of Thunder Bay or the city of Aurelia, so that can help, but it is included in your tuition fees, so you also have to consider that. And speaking of fees, there's also other fees included in being a student, like athletic fees, student union fees, health plan fees, and so on. And these can add up to about $800 per year. So it's always also important to look at a breakdown of all of the spending that you will have to make for school. Excuse me. I do know that at Lakehead, you do have the option to opt out of the LUSU Health and Dental Plan if you're covered under your parents or another insurance company already. So if you didn't check out that option this year, it's definitely something that you consider next year, and you can save a few $100s if you're already covered under another provider. And the last is living costs. So according to some estimates, students who live away from home spend on average $1,200 a month to live. And this includes everything from rent to food to internet to toothpaste and groceries and things like that. I did actually look up before I started this presentation today some costs of rent in the Aurelia area because that is the campus where I study. And the cheapest rent that I could find is $500 a month. And that can also range to up to $1,000, depending on whether you want an apartment to yourself or you want to share a house with somebody and have a few roommates. So you will have to consider that in the future as well. And some of these costs will also apply if you end up living at home. So an average for living costs when you're staying at home could be around $300 to $400 a month. And that would be for food and like other essentials like that. When I was living away from home, I would say that my average monthly expenses range from $1,200 to $1,400 a month. And this included my rent, my utilities, my groceries, my phone bill, and going out to eat and having fun on the weekends and things like that. All right, we're going to talk about spending on major purchases now. So when considering spending on a major purchase, you do need to understand all of the costs involved for that purchase, and you want to be prepared for them. So you'll want to make the major purchase a goal and set a savings plan for that goal. And you'll want to start saving as soon as possible and break down the bigger savings goals into a monthly goal that can so that you can celebrate your small successes. And you're going to want to learn about all of the expenses that may be incurred after you make that big purchase. So do you know how mortgages work if you're buying a house? Or do you know how car loans are like costs when it comes to interest? You want to do your research before buying. And you also want to talk about some of the hidden costs, especially with when you're buying a car, for example. You have to also consider insurance, gas, so that you can actually use that car, maintenance, parking. If you're driving to campus, you need to get a parking pass, your registration. And if you had to get a loan for that, you have to also include the interest to that loan in your decision as well. And you just want to make sure that everything is clear from the outset when you're making that big and major purchase. And you want to make sure that you know how all of the costs will be covered, because they will really add up. And you want to consider all of your options carefully. You can get advice from people that you're close with and that you trust. And if you can, you just want to make sure that you do your research and that you're comfortable before making that decision. So just the key takeaways from this section. The first is to take control of your money by creating a budget. The second is to monitor your spending to make adjustments to that budget that you created. And the third is that when making major purchases, you always want to be informed. All right, so let's move into our last section, which is on saving. If you don't plan to save, you probably won't. So a general rule of thumb is to pay yourself first, like we've mentioned before, and to put about 10% of your pay into a savings account with some kind of wiggle room there. So saving is one of the two key components of Canadians having a good financial well-being. And the other is to not use a credit card for everyday purchases. And so these are the three topics that we're going to cover so that you can kind of help with those two key components. The first is, why should we save? The second is the magic of compound interest. And the third is some tips to help you start saving today so that you can start reaching some goals in the future. So as we've mentioned, saving should be a part of your budget, and it should be a fixed part of your budget. So why should you save? Once again, it will help you meet all of your goals. It will help you be prepared for unexpected things that come up. It will help you be in control of your choices. And it will help you feel better knowing that you have some money available to you if you need it. So you're not worrying as much about your money and your financial situation. All right, so the following are some of the things to start and so that you can continue to save. The first is to make saving a priority. Saving some money, even a little each month, will help you do so many things in the future. And as mentioned before, saving should be a part of your budget. That is a big takeaway from this section. You always want to pay yourself first. The second tip that we have for you is to set a savings goal that will keep you motivated. So have a target, create a SMART goal, and make sure that it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time sensitive. And the third tip is to reward yourself. Celebrate the small successes when you reach one of those goals that you set out for yourself, because you are working towards achieving a bigger goal in the future. The next tip is to track your spending. So you want to know where your money is going. And the fifth tip is to try and use a budget and stick to it. So find something that works for you, because it will help you live a financially healthy life. I'm going to skip over this video just because of time. Oops. And we'll go over the rule of 72. So this is about investments and things like that. So the rule of 72 can be used to calculate roughly how many years your investment money will double. To calculate how long it will take, it's some pretty easy math. You just have to divide 72 by the interest rate that you are receiving on that investment. So for example, if you're earning 2% a year, it will take 36 years for you to double your money, as 72 divided by 2 is 36. And this can also be help determine how much inflation will hurt your purchasing power. So this is a little more complicated, and it's something that you don't consider as much. But if inflation is 2% a year, then the purchasing power of $1 will be cut in half in 36 years. So inflation is more than 12% a year, like in the early 80s, then the purchasing power of $1 will be cut in half in 6 years, which is actually quite surprising and things that people don't necessarily consider. So again, a good rule of thumb is to keep in mind relating to the concept of compound interest. And just a little quote here from Albert Einstein, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. I know, a little cheesy, but okay, so here's some saving tips. We've already mentioned this, but save before you spend. It should be a fixed element in your budget. Another is to look for ways to spend less on transportation. So use cheaper and maybe healthier ways of getting around. So this could be taking the bus, riding your bike, or walking to work if you're capable, and things like that. Another tip is to eat out less. Maybe a little easy for now because things are just opening back up, but something to consider in the future, because eating out less for many people will save a good portion of their money. And our final tip on this is use your phone wisely and don't waste money on extra charges, bad plans, roaming fees. Once again, just know what you're getting into when you're signing up for things that will have a good cost for a long period of time. All right, here are some more tips. We've got a bunch of these for you today. The first is to cut back on your vices. So for example, if you spend a lot on gaming, apps, expensive coffees, drinks, and other things like that, you want to cut back on those expenses because these are potentially examples of your wants, not your needs. Another is to avoid your impulse buying. So once again, always considering what is influencing your purchasing decisions, and trying to avoid fast trends and fads. And next is to don't borrow for day-to-day needs. So try to avoid paying interest, only use loans in your credit card if you are capable of paying them back in the short term. And the last is to take advantage of sales and deals. So you can actually save a lot of money this way if you buy off-season things at different points in the year. And like end of year sales, back to school sales can save students a lot of money and things like that. And I'm also going to skip that video just because I do want to be mindful of your time. And if you have any questions about this section, please feel free to put them in the Q&A and we can answer them and go into further detail. But Our key takeaways from this section are that savings keep you in control and help you accomplish your goals. Making saving a priority is super important, and we did provide you with a bunch of saving tips there. And the last, start saving today. The earlier you start to save, the better prepared you will be for the future. So that is one of the big takeaways from this section and from this workshop in general. Just a quick review of everything that we've talked about today. We talked about goal setting and SMART goals. We talked about creating and keeping to a budget, and we gave you a bunch of saving tips. So goal setting was focused on making good money decisions and having a roadmap to achieving those goals. And once again, we did talk about SMART goals. I do have a lot of experience with setting SMART goals. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them my way. In our budgeting and spending section, one of our key takeaways was taking control of your money by creating a budget, and that money should be spent on needs over wants if your budget allows that, and that you just want to monitor your spending in general, and that when making major purchases, you always want to be informed into what you're getting into. For our savings section, we talked about keeping savings for you in control, and it definitely lessens stress. We talked about how making saving a priority is important, and there were a bunch of saving tips once again. And start saving today. It's always better to start sooner rather than later. And just our learning objectives, again, revisiting this from the very beginning. Hopefully coming out of this workshop, you are able to make more informed purchasing decisions, and you can create a budget that includes savings and some other goals, and you can consider compound interest to increase your savings. And finally, for me, before we turn it over to the Q&A section, and to wrap up, we want to make sure that you have some next steps. So to live a financially healthier life, you can take control of your financial health by becoming more aware of your money goals, your habits, your options, and you can follow these steps. So once again, use that SMART goals setting sheet that we will provide for you, and set yourself some SMART goals related to money and budgeting. Another is to save 5 to 10% of your income and have that included in your budget. You want to also keep track of your spending and your income for a couple of months. So keep at it, and you will see a good result after you've gotten the hang of it. And we do have some more program resources, so you should have gotten a resource sheet from us, and there are future workshops that you can attend as well that can help you take more control over your financial situation. But we will go